Welcome to Take a Moment with NCH&C, with me, Miranda Gretton, the show where we take a moment to delve into the hot topics affecting our workforce, from compassion fatigue to dealing with stress, mental health to make-ahead meals for night shift workers. We'll talk to experts for tips and advice about the issues affecting you. Listen on your drive between patients or on your downtime, whenever you get the chance to take a moment. In today's episode, we're talking about the menopause. We'll be listening to real staff experiences, their preconceptions and perceptions, and thinking about how we can normalise conversations and raise awareness within NCH&C. Menopause is a subject we should all be aware of, including our male colleagues, so we can support our colleagues, friends and family, but also look after ourselves. 6 out of 10 women say their menopause symptoms have a negative impact on their work. The majority of women are unwilling to disclose menopause-related health problems to their line manager. With 8 out of 10 women of menopausal age in work, if you're listening to this podcast today, you will likely work with someone who has or is experiencing some form of symptoms. So what is the menopause? We're lucky enough today to be joined by 5 panellists, so a very warm welcome everyone. Please introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Alex Watson. I'm the HR business partner and I lead the wellbeing programme at NCH&C.
Hi, my name's Rachel Millett. I'm Deputy HR Business Partner. I work alongside Alex and do lots of work on wellbeing.
Hello, I'm Bev Eaton. I'm Patient Environment and Quality Assurance Manager in Estates and Facilities.
Hi, I'm Melanie Ainsworth. I'm a staff nurse in the inpatient unit and a Unison rep.
And I'm Rad Kerrigan. I'm Staff Side Secretary at NCH&C and also the Unison Branch Secretary.
Really good to have you all on the podcast today. Thank you for joining us. When did you first become aware of the menopause and how did this change your perceptions or preconceptions?
So I first became aware of the menopause through working on the wellbeing programme at NCH&C and through the work that was being focused on it nationally, both through the unions, through people like Unison, as well as through organisations such as NHS employers. And through the work that we were kind of being shared about the menopause, it really made me realise actually how little information that I had been shared right the way through kind of education and into early adulthood. Everything seemed to stop at pregnancy, and that's where a woman's health journey ended. And through the learning that I've done with this group and others, it's really fundamentally changed my preconceptions about the menopause, and at times I've been quite shocked by my own lack of awareness about the menopause.
The first time I heard about menopause was when my mum pointed to a book on the shelf and said, "You may need that at some point." The truth was, I think that was in my early 40s, and the next sentence was, "But it'll be years yet." And so I think that really sums up, I saw it as something that my grandma was suffering from, not something that was about to touch my life.
I suppose my first real awareness was my sister, who's a few years older than me, and I understood her symptoms and they were sort of, the classic symptoms. And with colleagues, we had pre and post-menopausal coffee in the office. So the caffeine used to set the menopausal ones off. So we would have a jar of decaf for them.
I think for me, it was my sister. She's 12 years older than me, had terrible hot flushes and used to sweat profusely. Being a younger person, we used to take the mick out of her, which was terrible now, going through it myself. So, yeah.
I think for me, as a man, I was always aware this was something that happened to women, and it was quite abstract, and it was women stop having periods, women tend to not be able to conceive after the menopause, and that was the end of it. Didn't mean much to me as a man. I don't think it was until I got involved as a union activist and I started to get involved in cases and learning and understanding what happens to women. The knowledge that I was receiving really helped me in looking after female members that might be encountering issues relating to the menopause, and as well as the realisation that the union I represent, Unison, it's like 80% female, and that very much mirrors the NHS. I could see there was some work being done within Unison on the menopause, and I thought it's something that we should be looking at within the NHS as an employer, because we're so female oriented, to a large extent female led. We have an ageing workforce. This is an issue that's going to come up again and again. It's a whole life-changing experience, and from talking to women, every woman's experience is different. It's not just a simple black and white situation.
Isn't it sad, though, that we're all sitting here having this conversation and most of the people in the conversation had no idea what was happening to them as it happened? And that really is the fundamental message from all of this. You know, our education sadly lets us down. So there's a failing for our children in school. And I'm not saying we've all been failed. Let's not be quite that dramatic, but it does feel really quite sad. And we laugh in our discussions because we have to find the humor about this, because sometimes you can feel dreadful, but actually it's not funny when most of the people that we're reaching out to think it either doesn't matter to them because it's years away, or actually it will be fine, it will be a breeze. And let's hope for most people it is. It's really powerful when people come together and share their experiences like this.
Well, it's making women aware of what's actually happening or what potentially is going to happen through the aging process, because you don't get taught that at school, and there's so much on the curriculum. You're never going to get that bit in. It'll be a sentence or a statement. It's never going to be in any depth. But there has to be a point in a woman's life where she's told about the menopause and what's going to potentially happen to her body.
Picking up on the point you just made there, Mel, I think that's really important. And it's something I do now when I'm meeting with female members who are going through absence management, and when they're describing the symptoms of what it is they're experiencing. And I think that could be. But I, as a man, I'm dancing around it a little bit until I kind of have to sort of ask the direct question and say, please don't be offended by me asking you this. It's more likely to be happening late 40s, early 50s. And so if I am talking to a woman of that age range, it is a question I ask now, but I do find it very awkward to ask, but it's important that I ask.
I think that's so important, Rad. And one thing we're definitely trying to do at NCH&C is to normalise those conversations so that you don't feel that you have to dance around the subject. It should be something that you can say, actually, do you know what? If you haven't thought about it yourself, do you think maybe you should go and speak to your GP? And I know, because we've had conversations before as a group, and I know that some GPs, they don't lead those conversations. So you have to feel empowered to go and ask for help and to say, I feel like this might be the menopause. Can we discuss that?
I chose to take a medical route to help support myself, and what's right for me isn't right for the next person. But before I had that conversation, and let's be clear, I've never had a hot flush, so I just want to get that out there. Before I had that conversation, I remember standing there with sweaty palms. I had to do so much research for myself, and I was literally telling my GP things that clearly they weren't understanding, because the conversation they were having back to me was purely focused on how many hot flushes I was suffering from. It didn't go anywhere else at all.
That's something we do need to discuss, is symptoms, because like you say, everybody has completely different symptoms. You won't be the same as the next woman. Can you guys describe some of your symptoms?
I would talk to my friends about my symptoms. No, I would listen to my friends, let me get that right, about their symptoms. Very all, different, but classic, where we were open and honest in, my close friends in our discussions. I never felt that I could contribute because I didn't even know that my symptoms were part of my menopause. It didn't correlate with anything they were saying. So I didn't associate it with a menopause. I didn't contribute because I thought, well, I'm not getting that. I'm not getting the hot flushes. I'm not getting the heavy periods. I'm not, but I was going through some, really quite a tough sort of time psychologically. But really, until I did the trainer and had a bit of a light bulb moment and think, I know now what all that was about. And honestly, till that training course was on, I'd sort of thought, is it related? Is it my hormones? But really, it was a complete light bulb moment that I thought, well, that's it. Yeah. A nurse had said to me, well, at your age, you've been through it now. But I thought, but I haven't.
So, having alluded to the fact I've never had a hot flush, I'm really quite open about the challenges that I think I've faced. Unfortunately, mine really kicked off with periods which were unbelievably uncontrollable, to the point which I had to plan family holidays. I knew there were certain times I just couldn't plan on leaving the house, and that's quite a common symptom. But that then progressed to things like hair loss. Hair loss, really quite distressing when that happens as a woman. really significant aching joints, to the point where not only was I very much suffering from insomnia, but I was having to get up in the night and put pain relieving gels on joints just to get through the night. So those for me were the really key symptoms. Sometimes I actually would wish for a hot flush, quite frankly.
So for me, obviously, it was the heavy periods, perimenopause, heavy periods. But then the elephant in the room, really dry vagina. Left it a good year before I went to the doctor. Got prescribed some cream. That was fine. It worked. Had a yearly review. And I didn't even know I was going through the menopause at that point. And the first doctor I saw was a woman. So I'd have expected there'd have been a bit more of an explanation about it. She just said I was dry, and I knew I was dry. So, you know, these are things that are actually happening. And IBS, you know, difference in, you know, in your bowels, and like Rachel said, achy joints. People have migraines and they're really debilitating. You know, it's just making people aware of those symptoms and the embarrassing ones.
I'm interested in Alex's perspective on this. So obviously, you know, we've been talking a lot about symptoms and women going through the menopause. Why is it so important from a workplace perspective to understand what our colleagues are going through?
I think from what you've just heard, it's the whole range of symptoms that you don't classically connect with the menopause that makes it so fundamental. So if you're trying to, as a manager, I'll be perfectly open, I'm 35, I think, recently had a baby. So menopause wasn't really kind of on my radar. But as a manager, you kind of want to do the best by your staff, but they aren't, as kind of Rad said earlier, you know, if you're managing someone through absence or their performance has dipped, someone might say, oh, they're not sleeping, or, you know, they've got aching joints. I wouldn't naturally go, oh, that might be the menopause. And what I think is so important is that we need to educate ourselves, both as women and as men who are managers and just colleagues, to go, actually, we could have a part to play in supporting those individuals to go, do you think it could be? I know it's a really difficult conversation. I don't mean to cause offence, but actually some of the things you've said are things I've heard from other colleagues or from my family, you know, and just to help people plant that seed that they might then go and look at it themselves and go, do you know what, that might be what I'm going through. And having these conversations, you know, 5 out of 6 people might not do anything about that conversation you have with them, but if one person does, and it means they get support earlier, their symptoms are more manageable, they're able to remain in work, because as Rad said, our organisational profile is largely made up of women who are over 40. Women over 40 are our most experienced, skilled staff who have probably another 20 years, 25 years of employment to have with this organisation. We can't afford to let those people go, and we shouldn't be letting those people go. But quite often, those staff feel like that's their only choice because they don't get support in the workplace. And that's not saying we're a bad employer, that's actually just employers in general haven't got it out there. So that's kind of why I think it is so important at the time that we kind of put the support out there and really give it the status it deserves as a long-term health condition. And they have access to the whole range of support that anyone else would have who has a long-term health condition.
I just found it really interesting hearing some of the symptoms that were being discussed just now, because the things that were keeping people up at night, I wasn't aware of aching joints as a symptom, etc. And I'm immediately thinking that's going to affect someone's concentration at work the next day. If someone's up all night, you know, in pain as well, so it's not just that they're not sleeping, but they're in pain. And as we all know, everyone that's experienced pain, which I would imagine is everybody on this panel, pain itself is tiring, it's debilitating. So it's really important, I think, that we do encourage women to speak about the menopause and about their symptoms, but also that we encourage male colleagues to be more understanding of and to ask those awkward questions.
And I was just going to say, as part of my role in estates, which is a largely male-orientated area, but one of my interests in this is, you know, what we can do to the environment that our staff work in. And something really, really simple could make a huge difference. You know, that needs that spirit of openness where they feel they can tell us what they need and we can then provide it. But it is one of those things where, like Rachel was saying, she's probably coming to work some days and she's not felt great after a painful night. And it's just really any adjustments we could make. If we have those open conversations, then we can make those adjustments.
There's another really important angle to this, which is why are we having this conversation now? Is it because it's fashion? Is it because it's in the press? Is it because perhaps Davina McCall's done a piece on it and therefore, now it's different than it was before? And I know I've been challenged. And I respect them tremendously, but I've been challenged by some older ladies who've said, just get on with it. We've always had to put up with this. It's a point of evolution. But actually, something that we've already touched on is a fascinating slide in the training that myself, Mel and Bev have done, which talks about the average age of a woman's menopause. Now, you might have thought that would gone up with our health outcomes being better, but it's actually come down. So the average age of a woman's menopause has come down by, I think, 7 or 8 years to the age of 51.
For me, my daughter's now going through the menopause. She had a hysterectomy, so surgically. And actually everything that's been happening, doing the HEMPEC course and doing the Unison 3-day course a few years back, has actually given her some insight. So things haven't been such a shock for her, which I think is really good.
Our workforce is so diverse. We've got support services staff who will sit behind a desk, potentially in a stuffy office, not able to open the window, experiencing symptoms, to community staff in a patient's home where the heating might be right up and they've got to do a physical dressing of a leg, so they're down on their knees, and it's there's such a spectrum with our staff and how they'll experience the menopause symptoms potentially. So I'm just interested in your thoughts on what are kind of 1 or 2 things that people could do to try and raise awareness within their teams of what their issues might be specifically for them in their teams, because it will be so different across the organisation.
When I've been thinking about it before we've started this, it's not just about raising awareness, it's maintaining awareness, because this is part of a life cycle, and as people have gone through it, some more people will be coming up to it. So it's maintaining that awareness, and it's not just a one-off task that we're going to do. It's not going to be campaign on raising awareness. It needs to be part of the fabric of what we do, and that we give regular signposting to support. I suppose, as I said before about me working in a male dominated environment, it's about being able to talk about it positively and celebrating, getting the men in the department to celebrate that they've got some women colleagues working with them that are capable and wise and experienced and knowledgeable and empowered and pretty blooming amazing, I would say. So it's something to celebrate.
Some people breeze through this, others will really suffer. But do you know what? Actually, if you've got a support network around you, you've got ways you can get trusted information, which is what our aim and intent is. So you do have some control over what's going on. When I've found the things that work for me, I feel pretty fabulous too on a good day. So, it's not all doom and gloom. It really isn't.
I think listening to both Rachel and Bev there just talk, it is about the little things. So I think if we all kind of took an action to learn one thing we didn't know about the menopause, or one piece of support out there that we didn't know was out there before.
Is there a network of people, or is it that actually we don't want there to be a network of people, we just want these conversations to be happening in our teams?
Yeah, kind of a bit of both, really. We're going to completely redo the menopause guide, which will include lots more information. It's been really well received, but we want to kind of expand it, make it much more in-depth for people, so they can kind of use that linked to the training that Bev, Rachel and Mel have all undertaken, and kind of really build those resources in. All our managers will be trained in the menopause. So as part of the wellbeing commitment that the organisation's made, all managers will go through a 1-day wellbeing training annually. And this year, a core part of that will be menopause training. It's mandatory, so you're going to have to go through it in the next 12 months. So hopefully that will create kind of a baseline knowledge amongst all our managers, where they can start to feel more confident and empowered to have those conversations. We'll continue to offer things like lightweight uniforms for those people who need them. So there's lots of stuff that's kind of still ongoing.
And finally, at the end of every episode of Take a Moment with NCH&C, we ask all our guests to answer this question: what should we try and take a moment to do?
For me, it would be enjoy family time.
Get out of the house and listen to the birds for a while.
I'd say, as well as the wonderful resources that we've got that we can share with you, then look to another trusted resource. My personal favourite is the Menopause Doctor. If you like Instagram, she has a fabulous presence. Give it a look.
For me, it would be learn something new for yourself and share it with someone, whether that's a man or a woman.
I've now got myself a greenhouse and I go and sit in my greenhouse for a bit. So just take yourself away from everything. Celebrate what you are.
Thank you for listening to Take a Moment with NCH&C. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please visit the podcast intranet page to leave a comment and for details of our other episodes. You can also follow NCH&C on all social media channels.